I'd now like to call this meeting of the Coventry Town Council to order at 6:30 p.m. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig? Here. Councilmember Shockley? Here. Councilmember LeBlanc?
Here.
Councilmember Pasqua?
Here.
Sorry about that. Vice President LeBlanc?
Here. President Lima is
Absent.
absent. Thank you very much. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Emergency evacuation plan. In case of emergency, please exit the rear doors to the parking lot. Right. Moving on to agenda item number 3, public comment on docketed items. Is there anybody here this evening to speak on docketed items? Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
There you go. Name is Paul St. Amand. I live at 1093 Main Street. Been a resident of Coventry for most of my life, and I've lived there for 41 years. So I'm also on the Coventry Historic Preservation Commission and have served on that for 9 years. So we have certain things that I wanted to bring up regarding the building down there that is referred to as the Teen Center, which was originally the Anthony Athletic Association. Back in 2019, the Town Council passed a resolution for our Historic Commission to, and I'll read it, upon request of referral to provide timely input and recommendations on matter before the Planning Commission, Town Council, or any other town board that concern historic structures, cultural features that may be impacted negatively by development. And we're here to just say that the Teen Center, which we have visited on a few different occasions over the past 3 years, a couple of years ago at the behest of Ian Dixon, and they were trying to determine what we could do with it. And I understand, you know, why it was not used for the Teen Center with the cost of what that was to run. And of course, the condition of the interior of the building is quite poor and needs an awful lot of work. So how that's going to work well into the plans that you are going to talk about tonight, I don't know. But the other part of the equation that I don't know if any of you are aware of, but being on the Historic Commission, our chairman made us aware of it. And there was a document that was done in 1970. And I have a copy of it here that you can look at. That was the original Anthony Athletic Association turning that building over to the town of Coventry. And the deed, when that was turned over to the town of Coventry, one of the conditions is that, I'll read it, this deed is made to the town of Coventry with the provision that said premise shall be used for recreational purposes only. And then it goes on from there, and I'll let you read it. But that is, I think, an important fact in all of this and what you have to consider and what you're doing. And from there, I mean, we can talk about, if you want, the historic nature of this building and the fabric of Anthony as an historic area. And our concern on the Historic Commission is just, if this goes ahead, that the exterior of that building, which is the only thing that Historic Commissions can control anyway, be preserved. That if this company does go in there, that their renovations or whatever they do not change the exterior character of it, that it would be done in kind if they would do replacing things. But I mean, there are so many other things to talk about with that building for this use, like how they're going to renovate it. Is, you know, is there bathrooms being put in? I know that it says, and I've read the whole thing that you have on the site, and you know, there are so many, being a builder myself and looking at that building and being a designer as well, there is an awful lot of stuff that has to be done to make that building safe. And is the town of Coventry going to be paying any of that, or is it all paid for by the company that's coming in? So anyway, that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Sure.
One moment.
One moment,
Mr.
sir.
Armand. Thank you for some of the background. I asked the town manager and the clerk to please pull the document that you referenced. I have a copy here if the council would like to see it. So thank you for bringing it up. I talked to a few people on the historic commission here in Coventry, and I'm not sure if you have this clarity, or possibly, someone with you. Anthony District is in the National Registry itself, right? I'll say it this way. When I looked it up for the Anthony Historic District on the National Registry, this building is listed as one of the historic areas, correct?
It is. The building itself is not specifically, I would say, on the National Historic Register, but this whole area is part of the Anthony Village Historic District, which is part of the National Register of Historic Places. There is a distinction between a building being put on a National Historic Register and an area being part of an historic place.
Okay, thank you.
So that gets into another thing we were trying to do, working on the Historic Commission, which we were preparing a resolution to present to the town council in the near future to make this building designated as a historic structure, not, just to protect it from that. If it was sold, for instance, and I would recommend that would probably be a good case of, way for the town to deal with it. But if they don't do this project that you're presenting as a single family residence, the study for that is right next door. Next door was the library, and that building was purchased and turned into a single family home. You have a single family home on the right and a single family home on the left. The old library was turned into a home because those people were very thoughtful and considerate, and they kept it in the period that it was made. And the same could be done for that building. Because again, you don't need much parking for that. There's enough parking like they did to bring 2 or 3 cars in on the side of it, if that was done and marketed as a single family dwelling. But we're still, back to trying to preserve the character of the town and certain buildings in the town that still exist, because as we know, we've lost a lot of the old character in the old buildings here already. And they, just continue to disappear slowly but surely. And us on the Historic Commission are trying our best to stem the tide of that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service on the commission.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else in council chambers that would like to speak on docketed items? Seeing none. Anybody on Zoom? Please state your name and your address. Mr. Teston, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Brian Teston, 2 Brookfield Road. I would just like to state that I oppose this, both as a resident and in my official capacity as chairman of the Anthony Fire District. From a fire and EMS perspective, I could see this causing strain on an already strained system. As you know, we're collectively, as the 4 districts in Coventry are already down a rescue. The proximity of this location to the Anthony Fire Station means that our rescue would be the first to respond in the case of any transports, and obviously these types of individuals may require transport to nearby hospitals. I could see that happening multiple times a day for the duration of the winter. When that happens, you're looking at a 2-hour period where the Anthony Fire Station would not be manned, and the 3,000-ish residences, businesses in this district would have a no one to respond to them, but mutual aid. So I have concerns about the fire service responding as well, as the fact that from an insurance perspective, most of these types of individuals don't have insurance, and therefore, if we do respond, we can't bill for it. So not only are we, putting out our manpower, but we're not able to benefit from the rescue recovery. So if this did go through, I would want some type of pilot program similar to the housing authority. And then, as a resident, I just have concerns about, the effect of a shelter on the nearby property values. I have concerns about the level of crime that might increase, and just generally offering these types of services. It only attracts more people that want the services. So you'll start seeing people come from further away and come into our small town. So or our portion of the town. So that's all.
Thank you very much for your public comment, and thank you for your service to the town. Is there anybody else that has any public comments? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Moving on to agenda item number 6, report of the town manager. This is an update on the status of the former teen center located at 668 Washington Street, Coventry, as a navigation center, providing shelter, navigating the housing opportunities available, getting vital documents, birth certificates, social security cards, providing mental health and or substance abuse treatment, and most importantly, full-time case management to prepare the residents for the next chapter of their lives. Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd just like to say that we've been working collaboratively with Secretary Pryor, Lauren, Thrive, and other partnerships on this since probably end of August, I want to say. So the Secretary reached out to us asking if we could look for a place in Coventry to temporarily house some homeless people that are already here in our community. So we did our due diligence. We identified 2 locations in town, the teen center as it's being described now, and the old police station as possibilities. We visited both places. The housing team decided that the police station wasn't appropriate. It was too big of a space, too broken up, it just wouldn't fit the needs that they were looking for. So they focused on the teen center. With that said, we started to go through the edifications of how to make this happen. The first question was, can we even have a shelter at that location legally? And talking to Doug McLean, there is no category in our zoning code for shelter. It doesn't exist. The other opportunity was to look to see if the state had any general laws that would be appropriate that would allow the council to give its authority to run this as a shelter. And that's what's in your packet now. That 45-5 pretty much allows the council to delegate any unused property for a new purpose. It's pretty broad. I don't know if that was the intent of the law originally, but it pretty much gives this council the authority to designate any town property into a different use. So that was the avenue we looked upon as to, okay, that's our road. So with that being said, I did brief the council about a month or so ago that this was a possibility, that we were looking into it. We still had a lot of work to do. We did bring in the building inspector to get his opinion. We brought in the Anthony Fire Marshal to get his opinion. We brought in some contractors, and we've kind of done our due diligence in getting to this point right now. A lot of the questions that Mr. Teston offered, we've asked ourselves. Not to get into his testimony, but the main thing that we've identified is that the clientele is already here. They're here in our community already. So whether we transport them from in back of the Nathaniel Green Center or the back of the bike path, or we transport them from the teen center, if they have a medical issue, we're still transporting them. We're not bringing people in. They're already in our community. We're looking to make this, again, a short-term lease from December 15th, maybe later than that before we get it upgraded, till April 30th. The documents are all in your package. Basically, the state and Thrive will take over all duties and responsibilities of the location. This council gives the authority to move forward. Solicitor Angel and I come up with a contract with them to handle all of the potential possibilities that could come up. So the idea in general is to thoroughly clean the building, the bathrooms, the kitchen area, etc. Add a shower, new carpeting, possibly some fencing to enclose the property. No cooking on the premises. They'll be bringing all 3 meals in for the 15 residents. The 15 residents will be 5 females, 10 males. It will not be a transient population. It'll be those 15 people are in that building until they get either permanent housing or some other applicable residence. So it's not going to be people are going to be lining up to get into that building every day. It's going to be those same 15 people. I'm sure Secretary Pryor is going to speak in more detail than I am, but that's a general overview of kind of where we're at. And another big piece of it is a majority of the residents will be from Coventry, from this area. And I think that's the goal when we first started this was how can we possibly take care of some of our own in this community? So with that said, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Vice President.
You said that there's some individuals here that want to speak on this. If
Secretary Pryor would like to
Okay.
speak.
All right, if you want to come to the podium and speak on this. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Stephen Pryor. I live on Imperial Place in Providence, Rhode Island. It's good to be with you all. I'm the Secretary of Housing for the state of Rhode Island. We are a newly constituted state department working on housing across our state, helping to finance and otherwise get built new housing and also deal with the challenges around vulnerable populations in Coventry and across Rhode Island regarding the challenges that have been developing because of the tightness of our housing market and other challenges that our state faces. And that, of course, includes homelessness. I very much want to commend you for just taking up this item, just for considering it. I want to thank Dan Parrillo for being very professional about this, thorough, thoughtful, challenging us as well, but enormously constructive. And we have found this across the state in a number of towns and cities. You're in good company, but you're leading the way simply by having the conversation and acknowledging that there are folks from Coventry who are currently without a roof over their heads. It's true. It is the case. And there are people from the area surrounding this good town who are also in need of shelter. And what we're hoping for is as the winter arrives, as we all look forward to Thanksgiving with our families, that we can share the warmth that we're experiencing with families and individuals who may not have other options. This is an extraordinary moment, a tough one, given how challenging our housing market is right now. Folks are getting crowded out and can't afford it. And people are starting to live out of their cars or couch surf. And in some instances, among people at risk of homelessness, these are the fortunate folks. We do have people who are truly living outdoors. So what we want to do is provide a safe, structured space that decreases the risks to the entire community outdoors, decreases those risks, and provides a more comfortable living space indoors that's safe. And of course, in the worst moments of the winter, help people avoid risks to their health and even risks that can cause them to perish in the cold. And we know that this, unfortunately and tragically, does happen in our state. Again, I want to commend you for even having this conversation. Let me get to it. This is a proposal for a navigation center at the former teen center. It's a navigation center because we aim, yes, to provide shelter beds, 15 shelter beds, but the idea is to help folks who are seeking a better future to navigate towards it. That's the purpose. This is by no means, in no one's conception, a permanent center, and it's not a permanent location for Coventry residents and for other Rhode Islanders who may be there, we hope, very temporarily. I'm joined by Tammy Ringling, who's the Vice President of Adult Services and Homeless Initiatives at Thrive Behavioral Health, and by Dan Kubas-Meyer, who is the CEO thereof. We're very grateful that Thrive is stepping up. Thrive has a track record right here in Rhode Island of working with vulnerable Rhode Islanders, including specifically homelessness. And we're grateful that Thrive is stepping up. And Lauren Barnes is here with me. And Lauren Barnes is our point person on facilities, with an emphasis as we head into the winter on navigation centers and other settings for people experiencing homelessness. We know that these kinds of facilities can be successful when there is a professional partner. And that is why Thrive is present, and why, to Dan Parrillo's credit, Dan has asked, how will this work beyond the town volunteering a site if you were to do so? How will we ensure that this is a professionally run, knowing that there, of course, there will be problems and challenges that folks are facing? How will we know that this is well run? And Thrive will be able to speak to you about their experience. There have been local outreach workers from a variety of sources: the Parent Support Network of Rhode Island, Thrive itself, the Behavioral Health Department of the state, BHDDH, and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, as well as the Health Equity Zone staff, the professionals of the HEZ, H-E-Z, of this area, HEZ is plural, of this area, that have done outreach and ensure that they're in touch with folks who may already be experiencing homelessness, may be out there, and also starting to understand what can be done to ensure that we're doing a high quality set of interventions. Tammy will expand upon this in particular, and Lauren can as well, but this navigation center will house 15 beds for women and men who are mostly from this community. There's been policies established at the state level by the continuum of care that enables that enables prioritization of people who are right from Coventry and from the surrounding area. And it's for, the idea would be for folks seeking shelter this winter through April 30th. That's what we've been discussing with Mr. Parrillo. So it really is for the winter season, for when it's coldest and when folks are at most risk. And our Department of Housing, along with Thrive, will be involved with the operation. You'll be able to interact with Lauren and with our professionals who work on homelessness as there are questions, and Thrive will be the day-to-day lead for the totality of it. So, Council Vice President, honorable members of the council, I thank you very much for your service in general, and I thank you in particular for taking up an issue that isn't easy. None of us wish to have to grapple with this issue. It isn't easy, but it is before us. And for all involved, for the most vulnerable Rhode Islanders, for folks who are homeless, this will be very beneficial. But also for the community, where we certainly don't want to create risks where we don't need to have them, and to ensure that we have less structure in our community. We want to ensure that we have structured environments, safe ones, that are contributory, that are beneficial, that are positive. So that's what we aim to do here. To be sure, we'll have to problem solve along the way together. Any project that is meaningful and worth it involves that. But I think you are on the right track in stepping up and having this conversation. So I thank you very much. And Lauren, what's your preference for the next step here? With the permission of the Council Vice President and the whole council, What would you like to do next?
Just run over the possible improvements to the building and then the municipal assistance.
Fantastic. I'd also just like to recognize, before I step away from the mic for the moment, Anna Moore, our Assistant Secretary, is here, and Kat Perez, who's our legislative liaison and works on key projects with us as well. So please.
Thank you all so much for having us and for hearing about this proposal. So thank you very much to the gentleman from the Historical Committee. We appreciate your comments and concerns. The intention is to do very minor interior upgrades, includes replacing the carpeting, providing maintenance for the heating system, and the possibility of adding a small shower stall into the kind of secondary wet kitchen area. There are already 2 bathrooms, a men's side and a women's side. So that will work out, very nicely for the proposed kind of 5 women, 10 men. So there will be, seemingly no exterior renovations or changes to be made to the historical facade of the building. And all of the kind of maintenance and upkeep of the building will also be the Department of Housing and Thrive's responsibility. So we will be kind of paying for the utilities and paying for the maintenance and the upkeep of the property. I also wanted to talk about the Municipal Assistance Fund grant that we have. And this money is a per bed formula. So it helps any municipal fees that may incur. So if there is additional police, fire, EMS needed, this money can cover those costs basically. Any municipal fund, any municipal issue you have, this money can kind of fund that. So we have indicated the grant to Dan and are happy to also kind of walk you through the process of how to go ahead and apply for the per bed formula. So it would be approximately $2,000 per bed. And I will kick it over to Tammy.
Good evening. Thank you. I just want to address, before I forget, the concerns about the multiple EMS calls per day. We actually are currently, so we are Thrive Behavioral Health, formerly the Kent Center. We have been the behavioral health provider in this area since 1976. We have a long relationship with Coventry as well as all of Kent County, and we value that relationship. So this is not something that we're walking into lightly. We are certainly going to protect our relationship with you, trying to fill this need for folks in our community, because these are the folks that we serve as well. So what we've actually found, we have a shelter project that we're working in the city of Warwick right now. We are not calling EMS daily, and it's about 3 times the size of this project that we're talking about. So I don't think that would be a concern. I do think these folks are already living in your community. If you're calling EMS, you're right, you're calling them anyway. And the police or fire are having to find them wherever they are. Here it would be one location, and we have on-site support 24/7. So we would be able to provide some of that support and possibly avoid some of those 911 calls. We also work with folks right away to start filling those gaps that they have. We talked about navigating forward. Obviously, insurance is one of the important things that folks need. And so we're helping them with that application. This navigation center will provide shelter workers, folks that are going to be at the shelter 24/7. This is a fire watch building, so there will be staff available to call 911 should something happen, because I know it's an old building and there are some codes that are a little bit outdated. So we would have that fire watch on, as well as we have case managers in this project. So the case managers would be tasked with going out into the community with folks and helping them get their vital documents, helping them apply for benefits, helping them apply for housing, hooking them up with primary care providers, whether it's CCAP in the area or down the road at Thunder Mist, wherever they end up connecting with their service providers. We're going to help them make sure that they're getting there. Because if they've been living outside, they're likely not taking care of either their medical care or their behavioral health care. So we do a lot of linkages to providers for folks, as well as helping them access some of those benefits that are really challenging If you don't have other inherent things that are getting in the way, it's still challenging. So we help them overcome some of those barriers so they can connect with that. So what we would see is we would see referrals coming in from your local providers, from the police department, from EMS, from primary care providers. Hey, I have this patient who's living outside. They would call us. And then we would walk through the process to see if that person is eligible to go ahead and have a spot in this navigation center. So we are really looking at your folks in your town that are living outside. We will negotiate the referrals. We know how that process works through the coordinated entry that folks need a referral, but we can facilitate that referral with the changes in the regulations that have happened this year that Secretary Pryor mentioned. So the anticipation is that somebody would come to the navigation center, they would stay until we are able to get them into another housing situation. So pretty much we might be working with the same 15 people for the entire time that we're open. If we're able to follow about the same model that we have now, we might be able to house 1 or 2 from that project during the 4.5 months that it's open. It really depends on how far along in the housing process folks are when they come into the project. It definitely influences how quickly, and sometimes people are homeless and living outside for a short period of time and they have a next step. It's just waiting. You know, sometimes we're able to connect them with that relative that they're able to move in with. Usually that happens before they hit shelter, but sometimes not. So there are some options, and we would look at all options for folks to help them move to a more permanent situation. You have this, so I don't want to read to you what you already have. I wonder if there's any particular questions that I might be able to answer for you.
At this time, perhaps what's the pleasure of the council? Good.
I'd like to get some feedback from the solicitor on this deed, because if this is an issue, then the rest of the meeting is really irrelevant.
What's recreation?
Solicitor.
Through the chair, generally speaking, rights of reversion, which is what this is, are based upon the disposition of the property itself. So you're not disposing of the property. That said, even if you were to consider that, I'm not sure that the right of reversion at this point is effective, given the fact that we don't know who the successors or assigns may be of the former association, which, as I understand it, is no longer an incorporated entity of any kind. But you're not disposing of the property. So rights of reversion generally relate to the disposition, as in possession. So you're not dispossessing yourself as a municipality of the property. And based on what I've read and heard, it doesn't sound like the character of the property is being changed. It's its use for a period of time, temporary period of time, is being changed. That said, you know, when you look at the general law that's in front of you, the general law certainly gives you the right to lease the property and for the council to make a decision on that. But it certainly can be a factor that you think about as you consider this, whether or not there's the spirit of the bequest, if you will, is somehow being violated. But you're not disposing of the property. Does that help?
Thank you. To start discussion, I guess, is there a motion that anybody wants to make?
Was she done or just waiting to see if
I-
she wanted to?
Uh,
comment?
I'm done if
Okay,
you don't
we're
have any
done.
questions.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this? Okay. Name and address for the
My
record,
name
please.
is Dan Kubismeyer. I'm the president and CEO of Thrive Behavioral Health. And I just wanted to reinforce a little bit what Tammy said in terms of our presence here already in Coventry and our desire to work with you to really make Coventry a better place for everybody. In addition to, we're the mental health center for Kent County, Thrive Behavioral Health, formerly the Kent Center. So we have a statutory responsibility to be the go-to organization for folks with mental health and behavioral health problems. We have a full contingent of staff ranging from psychiatrists to case managers, which we have at our disposal to utilize to help support this project. So if there are folks that have problems, we've got counselors that we can bring in, psychiatrists to do assessments. We have those resources. We know your community. We've got a staff member that works with your police department in the evenings. We've got staff in your school system working with your students and your teachers to better the school. So we're familiar with your community, but most importantly, we've got the resources to make this project work and the experience to do it. We've been working the homeless system since 2007. We pioneered the Housing First program here in Rhode Island, and it's challenging to work with the homeless. It's not a simple solution. And to Tammy's and her team's credit, they understand how to engage individuals to make this work. It's not, I can't guarantee it is going to be a complete success for every single person, but they've got the skills that work with this population effectively. It's good. It's basic outreach and engagement. It's how you treat people. That sounds simple, but it's complicated when you're dealing with folks who are resistant to authority, to structure, to the whole thing. But when push comes to shove and all of a sudden it gets brutally cold and life's on the line, well, then they too realize that they need shelter. So I guess the point I want to make is that we've got the resources in terms of the people to supplement just the case managers that are there. And we've got the experience. So when it comes to working one-on-one with these individuals, to basically give them the best chance to take that next step to permanent supported housing. And then with the support of the Department of Housing, we'll do what we can to get these folks into permanent housing, because that's our goal. Our goal is sheltered for sure. But the real goal is to get these folks into housing so this does not become a problem going forward.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Mr. Vice President, if I
Yes.
may, Director Robelot is here. Obviously, we're all familiar with him, and he's actually dealing with some of this clientele now. So if he could come up and just kind of give his opinion as to how he sees what's going on in Coventry now and how he thinks it'll work with this upcoming opportunity.
Sure. Good evening.
Good evening. I can first say we've worked with Thrive Behavioral Health consistently through my tenure of 30 plus years here at the Department of Human Services in Coventry. We work very closely with our police department, our school district around these issues for families in our town. We've gone out with, and I know that Chief Heisel will also speak to our collaborative effort to go out and engage folks to get services. We have gone on many occasions to encampments within our town. You know how large our town is and how many places folks are able to find shelter in the nice weather. We were able to engage some folks into some connective services, which I know that Thrive is, that's their modus operandi. They also continue to engage folks in mental wellness and also in connecting for substance abuse services too. Because just like folks that are housed, there's that many variety of folks that aren't housed for all different reasons. So engaging folks, families, adults, seniors, we have an increasing number of seniors in our state that are homeless. We work very closely with Thrive on a variety of issues, but we have a group of community members right now that are presently living in their automobiles and are, as they say, couch surfing. Sometimes family members, the same family, are in different houses and still getting to school and getting to work. I believe from where I sit, the opportunity to house 15 people who won't be out the elements in the most difficult time of year and actually engage in a continuum of services will be a benefit to them, but also ultimately a benefit to stability within our community too, long-term. I'm a social worker by trade, so you know where I'm coming from with this. I believe that everyone should have that basic ability to be connected to services and have a quality of life of improvement, of continuous improvement. And I know that the chief will speak to a lot of the calls that we've gone out together on, and our social workers and our police officers have engaged continuously throughout the summer months with a variety of folks that are in need, along with trying to connect them. And some folks are willing for that to happen, and some are, you know, struggling with that. And I think the mental health component and the substance abuse component that Thrive's able to provide, along with the shelter piece, that they're not just coming to a place and just staying there overnight or for 4 months, that they're going to engage them to get into that, almost that gateway to some more independence and some more stability. And that's my opinion on where we stand with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Again, to open up discussion, is there a motion by anybody?
I'd like to hear some feedback from Chief of Police too on this as well.
Sure, Chief Ice. Good evening, Chief.
So I can tell you, I looked through some call screens that we've had over the last 2 years. We average on the call screens around 60 plus calls. But the problem with that is that's only if the narrative reference some sort of homelessness. So that number could be actually higher.
Can you give a timeline?
The last 2 years. So it's about 60
So
plus per year
60 plus per year.
for the last 2 years. So 60 and 60, about 120 and change or 130. So they range from like trespassing to panhandling, or could be we have suspicious activity, homeless camps that we've gone to. We've had well-being checks on people sleeping in their cars, things like that. Sometimes larcenies, sometimes disturbances. We've had all those sort of calls. With this situation here, from what I've heard about the program and everything, I don't anticipate an increase in our call service, because if the people are already here and that's who we're dealing with already, the calls should not change. That's my opinion. I'm not sure if you were asking it or not, but that's my feeling on it.
From a public safety standpoint, one of my biggest concerns is that the location only has one parking spot. And to my limited knowledge on this project, I believe there's going to be meals served. I think 2 cold and one hot meal. So there's going to be deliveries, and that building is right on a corner. So my biggest concern is I know there's 15 beds, so that's 15 people. Plus there's going to be staff. Plus there's going to be caseworkers coming in and out. Plus we're going to have deliveries. And this is not a location where we have a lot of space. So my biggest concern is when are the deliveries going to happen? How much impact is that going to have on the traffic there? We have one spot. So where's everybody going to park? They're going to park down by like Ace, and then they're going to walk across that busy 117 is pretty busy, and then up to get to this facility. I mean, from a public safety standpoint, what are your thoughts on that?
So I believe the town manager said the ACE was allowing them to park over there. As far as you have.
That was something we're going to follow up on, if that would be a possibility, but we don't foresee any issues with utilizing 4 or 5 parking spaces. Correct.
And there would be crosswalks. I'd probably go to the site more and evaluate myself to see if I foresee any other issues. I'm not sure about the delivery times or anything like that. I wasn't part of any discussions on it. I was just talking more about the crime, because that's a concern with certain people, is crime and things that are happening. But I could definitely look into the traffic end of things more.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Yep, sure. Councilwoman Chavez.
So you mentioned some of the calls that you received, and some of them seem almost calls just based on existence. Like, I see someone, he's making me nervous. Can you check it out? But you also spoke to larceny. So people actively stealing, I don't know what makes larceny different than any other sort of robbery, and I don't know that it's that important to the discussion. I also wonder though, are there any calls you received where people were being accosted or someone was on drugs or acting erratically, or really someone, it was mentioned earlier, this building is between two houses, two single family homes. And just want to make sure we're not moving a problem and that we're actually solving a problem.
So we've had that, but we've also had that with people with homes, stealing and everything else, people going through cars. It's not isolated to homelessness, or it's not isolated to people with homes. It's a thing that the Coventry Police deals with on a regular basis. As far as putting them into the same, you're gonna have 24-hour supervision there with Thrive. So I believe it would be less than if they're out in a encampment or something like that.
Yeah, and with some of these questions, I'm checking my own biases. Like I make an assumption that you're more likely to have a mental health problem or be addicted to drugs of some sort if you are to become homeless. I don't know that that's true. I don't know of I think we have 40 to 60 homeless people in the area. Is this for the most part, you know, with inflation and the cost of apartments, your expenses got higher than your income? I really don't know. And I want to make sure that, you know, my thoughts are, this isn't going to impact me personally that much. But if it was next door to me, would I want it? And would I, after 2 months, be like, you know what? This isn't bad. People are being taken care of. If this was just about housing people in the cold, I don't think that it would have to come before us. I think it is way more than that. It's making sure that the people who are paying rent and paying mortgages in areas where this is their home, are we taking care of them too? So those are my questions. I'm just kind of making sure everyone understands. I understand some of them are biases, but I don't know where that line gets drawn.
If I could respond to that,
sure,
if you don't mind. So the goal too is, if this does pass tonight, we do plan on having some kind of community engagement with the neighbors around that residence to address any of their concerns. One of the first things I brought up was we don't want to have any loitering out in front of the building. If anyone's on that property, if they're going to be outside the building, they can be out in the rear yard. That's what that space can be utilized for. But we do plan on having some engagement with the neighbors. I spoke to a couple already and I clarified some things, some misconceptions they had already today. But we do plan on doing that outreach to address any concerns of the neighbors. And like was discussed, it's going to be ongoing. We don't think that tonight's meeting, we're going to solve everything and answer every question. As things come up, we're going to address them. We're not going to just wash our hands of it. It's going to be an ongoing commitment by the town to these 15 people.
The council received public comment. Thank you, Joanne, for sharing that public comment. One of their concerns was, based off of the agreement, there's no requirement for a background check, and there's no requirement for drug and alcohol testing. Are you aware of any navigation centers in Rhode Island that actually do require those things for entry?
I am not. They can maybe already speak to that better than I can, Mr. Vice President.
I just want to speak to the public comment that we received.
Absolutely. To speak to the drug and alcohol, it is a housing first project. So there are folks that are going to have alcohol and drug issues. Our hope is to engage them in treatment, to manage those issues, and to help, hopefully, them overcome those issues. It's really hard to overcome those addictions when you're living outside and you don't know where you're going to lay your head. We have a gentleman at another shelter project who is a longtime had a long time alcohol issue and has just celebrated 40 days sober because we've been able to keep him inside and engage him in treatment. So it does help and it does work. As far as the background check, we actually will be doing a background check on folks coming into the shelter, because this is a project that is not going to allow folks with sex offender backgrounds. It's a co-ed shelter. It's not a good idea. So we are actually going to eliminate that population. So what anybody can get on the computer and find out a background check with somebody to a minimal degree, this public record. What we also do is we establish a relationship with the police department in the area. So we will end up meeting. And if we have somebody that either we're getting other information that's not jiving with what we're finding, we're going to check, because we have a commitment to the people that we're serving in that project.
Councilwoman Shockley?
So Lauren and I had just had a discussion yesterday, and I just wanted to check because you only mentioned sex offenders. And she said that no one with a history of domestic violence, violent felony, sex offenders, or arson.
I would have to check on the arson. That one might be accurate. I think the other one is sex offense, but I can certainly follow up with the Department of Housing.
Thank you very much. For us to discuss, I think we need to have a motion. So what is the pleasure of the council?
I think it warrants discussion. I'll make a motion. It's the question on the
Motion to approve Navigation Center at 668 Washington Street.
I think for ease of voting, yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. I have a first. Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. We have a first and a second. Discussion. Councilwoman Lubbock?
Just want to double check because I think last time we heard this is the teen center is currently in an R20, right? It's the current zoning.
Residential, yes.
Yeah. So in residential, if I move to Coventry right now and I'm in a residential zone, I looked up the district use regulations that are on the books right now. And I think, well, I'm safe from any kind of worry here because, wow, Coventry has all these things that you can't do. You can't make a motel and hotel. You can't even get a special use permit for that. You can't create the mobile home park. You can't take boarders, 5 to 12 roomers or more. No, it's labeled no. You can't even get a special use permit for that. But wait a minute. The state steps in and says, wait a minute, Rhode Island General Law 4525 says your local town council can override anything because we say it can. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. I asked myself if I understand this is a temporary program. I know all the benefits. I'm a Christian. I know this is a very hard decision for a lot of people. But when I think about the property rights of the residents in town, what they expect versus what we're now telling them that I can override all of that, I don't think that's right. If this entire program was in commercial zone, in something that was not residential, that none of these things are allowed in current ordinance, I would be much more comfortable saying yes, personally. I've also had a number of phone calls, text messages, and Facebook messages that have all said no. I have to listen to my residents. I don't like the state exception. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. So I'm going to have to vote no on the motion tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Pasqua.
So first, I want to thank the state and Thrive for coming in tonight and providing this testimony and background on this program. I think the homeless situation has definitely been exacerbated over the last couple of years. I mean, I've been in Coventry for 25 years, and I don't recall any time until the last couple of years where I would see homeless people standing on Laurel Avenue, Center New England, the exits off the highway. It was surprising to see the first time I saw it. So I'm sensitive to the issue, and in my professional capacity, I work on a fire department and I deal with EMS and I meet these people, you know, and you can't help but feel bad for them, you know. And sometimes when you look at them, they look just like you and I, and you know, and you almost realize they're homeless when you start to ask them, what's your address? And they're fumbling for information and they're giving you roads that don't exist in town. and you realize what's actually happening. And you know, you can't help but feel bad. But at the same time, I'm going to reverberate what Councilor Ludwig said. We have a duty to represent the people that we're here. We've been elected to represent, just as some of you out there have been elected to do. And I also have not had any supportive messages or feedback whatsoever on this. So that does play a big factor in my feelings on this, because nobody has messaged me and said, we want to do this. Not one. Another concern that I have, this has been talked about already, is EMS. And I've been in this field for a long, long time. And I have to say that I would, based on EMS protocols in the state of Rhode Island today, and the protocols you guys operate from yourselves in your discipline, it sort of opens up a window for EMS to be activated much more than when they're not in that environment. And EMS becomes almost like a jitney service back and forth to the hospital quite a bit. And in Coventry, and in true transparency, we do not oversee the fire districts. They're independent corporations that operate within the town of Coventry. We have no jurisdiction on them, but they are corporations that operate within the town of Coventry. And we represent the town of Coventry. So we still have to take into consideration the impact our decisions have on residents, commercial, business owners, and corporations like our fire districts. The situation on the public safety side in Coventry is not great. If you turn the TV on for 5 minutes, you can hear about it. It was on the news this morning, actually. And any added stress, albeit just a little bit, to the fire and EMS divisions in Coventry, the districts in Coventry, could be a breaking point, even if it's minute. That's how close they are. They just lost another rescue in Coventry recently. So I do have a concern that even if it's a couple of times a week, that this is going to be a stressor on our fire districts. And it creates another challenge in the town side, because we don't oversee the districts. We don't fund the districts. We have no tie into that. But as you stated, the municipal grant program is meant for fire and police. Well, how do we address that here? That's something we would have to talk about on this side if this was the pass. But you know, you're going to add stress to the fire districts on this. There's no doubt. I also had quite a few people message me, and a lot of them had brought up same questions about drug rehab and background investigations on people. And I think it's important to know that who wouldn't qualify for it. If you had somebody who had a violent felony, would they not qualify? Do we have anything in writing to show that the people that would be accepted into this facility? And the other thing that stood out to me when I was reading the document was it said that most of the people would be from Coventry. It said not all, but most. And so that's subjective. And, you know, when you get into getting these applications and start reading through them, if you say, well, I just got 5 applications of people in Coventry, we filled the remaining 10 beds with people from wherever, and then we have people from Coventry that are needing assistance, there's no space for them now. So one of the hard things for me that I would hold my feet to the fire on is, if we would have passed this, I would absolutely want the beds for people from this town only. And that's it. If there's empty spot, it waits for the resident or the person who's here that needs it. We have to help our own people first and only, in my opinion. And notes here. Did you have a response to that? I think it looked like somebody had a response to that. No? Okay. So those are my big points. I didn't know if, and this is really a question, is there, in Warwick, where you're operating this already, is there anything in place with like EOHHS for non-emergent transportation to take that up, take that stress on EMS. Yeah, please.
Usually what happens if folks have a non-emergency, it's our staff that are transporting them. We do connect staff up for regular visits with MTM. Most of the folks do have Medicaid that we're working with. So it's generally either our staff or MTM that's transporting. And many times if folks even need to go to the hospital, we have staff on site, we're transporting them. Usually we are not calling 911 unless it's a major medical that's beyond my staff's ability. If somebody's cooperative and hey, I need to go to the hospital, I cut whatever, we're helping them do that. We're not calling 911 for that. So we do try to ease that burden and keep as much of that within our own staff, because we're familiar with the people and we don't want to burden the towns that are doing it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I got for now.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Shockley?
Yeah. You know, just for the discussion, I agree with what my fellow council members have said, other than the resident outreach to a certain extent, because this is one of those not in my backyard type situations. But I do think as a property owner, you should have the right to expect the property next to you to not become a hotel, a shelter, a multi-family house, if that is not what it was intended for. I think the items that we've been discussing based on our fire department and EMS, we're in a worse place than most towns when it comes to that. I think my concern, just as a resident of Coventry and a member of the town council, is the police situations we're already having. And I am concerned about that. So if at this meeting we decide, no, we're not going to move forward with this, what do we do to help these people who are, if they have drug problems or mental health problems already? West Warwick, our neighboring town, is having a lot of issues right now. Public spaces are becoming unusable. It's becoming uninhabitable in their Main Street area because of the homeless population there. And I'm assuming if it's not the same people, it's an overlap of the same people who are homeless. I don't want to pretend that by not putting up this shelter, the homeless people here have disappeared. So it kind of, whether or not this is the solution we decide on, it's still our problem. And I would want to know more. Probably, Mr. Robillard would be our best asset when it comes to this, but how do we assist people when they're still homeless? And from conversation I've heard tonight, how do we assist those who we don't even know about because they don't have drug problems and they don't have mental health issues? They're just homeless and they're being able to figure it out on the short term. But is there a way we can assist there too? Because if that was the only population that we were helping here, I might try harder to get to a yes. Like those people who, I do work, I just don't make enough money. Or my child isn't living in the same place as me right now. And that's why it seems like I'm a single person, because I have to let them stay with someone for their safety. And so they stay in school. Like, there but for the grace of God is basically where we all are. So this problem is like breaking my heart. I don't know that I can let this be the solution, but I hate that the problem becomes no smaller by us saying no tonight. And that makes this decision very difficult. On a purely town council level, I don't see how we can put this right in front of 2 single-family houses, but God, it's not an issue that's going to go away. And right now I'm complaining about the air conditioning blowing on me and I don't understand the irony of that. Like,
thank you. Member Ludwig?
I'd fully support a future agenda item for council discussion on the matter. Until this was brought up, I had no idea there was a homeless problem in Coventry, I'll be honest. I don't see it in my district. I didn't know about it until it was literally brought up a month ago. So if we could please put that on a future agenda item, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Council, for your comments. I'd like to echo everything that Councilwoman Ludwig stated. I think this is the wrong location. As I stated, there's limited parking. I think deliveries are going to be an issue. And I really appreciate this deed that you shared. While it's not this council, this same body signed this deed, and it says, in the event that the premises shall cease to be used as for recreational purpose or shall be used for other purposes other than recreational purposes, then this deed shall be void. And it was signed by this body. So I'm not going to use the state's law to trump all of this. So I echo Councilwoman Ludwig's comments. Anyways, are we ready for a vote? Any other comments?
Do you mind? I know that Mr. Parrillo, who we hired to be our town manager, has put a lot of effort into if we decided to vote yes, making it so this project could happen. If you're comfortable, I would like your feedback on it.
I support the shelter. We've, not just me, we've put a lot of work into it. I think it benefits Coventry as a whole. It benefits this town. If it inconveniences some neighbors for 4 months, I totally understand that, and I'd be willing to explain that to those neighbors. But personally, I'm for the shelter.
Can I also, you did say people who were neighbors reached out to you and
Yes.
you talked to them.
Yes.
Can you give some feedback as to how those conversations went?
Their main concern was they didn't want it to become a hangout. They didn't want all the people hanging out in front, encroaching on their property. One person who actually works for the town lives 2 doors down from the property. Her concern was them hanging out in her front yard, that kind of stuff. So that was their main concern was, would it take the character, if you want to say, from the neighborhood by having the shelter there. And I told them basically that those 15 people are going to be in that building or behind the building. They're not going to be out in the front. Again, we're talking the winter. I don't think they're going to just be walking around in the middle of winter when it's 10, 15 degrees out. They have a shelter that they wouldn't have other than that facility. So they would be in that building with services, with activities and so forth, until they do get some permanent residence. Whether, again, that's a relative, whether that's a friend, a family, whatever that would be. But that's my personal opinion. I totally understand where you guys are coming from. Again, personally, I don't think it's a heavy lift for us to do this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you again for taking up a difficult item. You could have found a way to avoid the conversation. So I'm grateful for it. I want to address a few of the issues, affirming points that Dan Parrillo has made in case it helps. There were questions about EMS service and expense and burden on the town. Lauren Barnes expressed this, but because we have a brand new program of state funding, we can give you a $30,000 grant to cover costs associated with this that go to the town. This is not cost for our budget, it's for you. And I would, if Mr. Parrillo comes to us and tells us it's $32,000, we can talk about that. So I think that you will more than have your expenses covered, given that your own police chief has expressed that this is likely gonna, if there are any calls, it would be calls that you would have seen anyway. So I think you might see actually positive revenue, more dollars to your town, conceivably, if you were to accept our grant and to take this work on. So I just want to make sure you heard that part. The state law in effect has been changed to enable you on local participation. Coventry residents. The continuum of care is a body separate from my department that governs this. Don't want to let that complicate things. Up to 75% of the beds may be committed to Coventry residents. 75% of the beds may be just for Coventry residents. That's the new rule. It's new this year. There'll be efforts to ensure that the word goes out for Coventry residents to receive these beds. If you need to talk with us about this and increase the outreach, and make sure that this is for your residents, we can do that. We can work on that. We want this to serve Coventry first. This is honestly a break from past tradition for this winter, for this year, where you have this ability under law, completely not only legal, but encouraged. We want this to center on Coventry. On the questions that have been asked, Councilmember Shockley, for example, said, said there are folks who are experiencing homelessness where, quite frankly, there may not be other clearly evidenced problems. It's not about mental health. It's not about substance abuse. It's about the housing market, and it's about tough times. I can tell you from personal experience being in this job now, there are a lot of Rhode Islanders who are just experiencing tough times. And it might be, and I respect it. I respected Councilmember Ludwig to say, let's take up an item at a future meeting. I do respect it, and thank you for that. I believe that was genuine, and all of what you're saying is authentic. We don't have the time, honorable members of this council, to come up with new solutions in time for this winter. People's lives are at stake. You have to confront that reality. I don't want to make this too tough. I do want to state the reality. Their well-being is at stake. And yes, indeed, during the coldest moments of the winter, people's very existence is on the line. People do perish in Rhode Island every winter. We can change that, starting in Coventry, because you have a town manager who has put the effort in to make sure this is professional and as safe as can be for your residents first. And because you have a facility that could lend itself to 15 beds, not 1,500 beds, not an unmanageable giant facility, 15 beds, with the professional staff getting the job done, with a State Department who will lean in to help you. Not saying it would be perfect. Honestly, we're out of time for brand new solutions from scratch. Does anyone in this room believe that it will materialize? We're here to help, believe me, but let's be realistic. It's already getting cold out there. Not every night, but you can feel it. It's time for a real solution right now. And if we have to adapt and adjust and improve together, how much more responsive can we be than our senior team is right here in the room with you in Coventry, trying to make things happen for your residents as the priority. We would do a lot to help make this happen. We also understand if you think it just can't work. Bless you for considering it, for taking valuable time out as the first holiday of the holiday season arrives. We're here to tell you that the resources are here to help you make it happen. Real dollars on the table, never before available. The prioritization within the law to enable your residents to enter first exists. So can you look at that scenario and say to yourselves, maybe in a future winter, let's take our chances this winter that Coventry residents who are outside make it through okay. Thank you one more time.
Thank you.
So in areas where you've had these shelters before, what happens in April?
What happens
Like,
in
do
April?
we have 16 homeless people or 15 homeless people, or
Yeah.
hopefully a few got housed? But now we've moved people to an area.
Yeah.
Whether they were 2 miles down the road or not, we've moved them here.
Yeah.
What happens in April?
Well, for starters, we've done some work to look at how other 4-season parts of the country, so especially New England, handles when it gets warmer again. Most places do lower the number of beds because the reality is that folks do fend for themselves out there and it's just less dangerous for them. So to be truthful about it, a lot of places let some of the beds go. We have, from last winter going into this winter, actually sustained the number of beds, and we're only increasing. This would be 15 more on a baseline that's stable, and there's other places doing it. 41 new beds by the Catholic Diocese in Providence at Emmanuel House is happening. So what I will say to you is, we're going to keep working at it to see that we have some sustained beds, but it's also very ordinary for where people are less at risk of the cold impacting their health when they're fragile, letting some folks. Now, listen, here's what I would say to you. If you have an interest in even better solutions than this teen center and than this community center, as Councilmember Ludwig very intelligently and in a welcome way said, let's work on that for post-April. Let's work on where might it be better to have some beds. Maybe not even altogether 15, but where can we find 8 or 10 scenarios for folks in your town? Let's work on that through a winter where we know people are safe and at least protected from perishing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Councilman Paswell.
When considering this, one of the things that I had thought about was some language or changes, or not really so much language, but some changes to the lease to give the town an option to sort of get out if there's a problem. Let's say it becomes a problem for the PD and becomes a huge strain on EMS. Something in there that gives the town discretion to say, this is not working. This is not what we were.
I believe there's language in the contract already, a 60-day notice. I believe it's already in the contract, I believe.
Okay. So in that situation, if there was a, big burden on the police department or whatever, and, we would bring it to, they bring it to us, we would talk with you, and we could get out of this agreement if it was not working.
Yeah, I think that's definitely feasible. I mean, I think the state's more than willing to do whatever we can to accommodate it, to fix what is broken, if there is something broken. But at the end of the day, if it really is a super strain on our resources and there is that out in the contract, I think that gives the council that ability.
Mm-hmm.
Council member, if I may.
Yes.
You won't have trouble finding this. Dan has access to us. We work very, very well together. Mm-hmm. We won't be hard to find if there are problems to solve. Way shy of, well before you're thinking about ending. Mm-hmm. Let's work on the problems together.
And kind of circling back to the situation where, we don't have fire districts. That's something that I think the town really needs to consider talking with the districts. And there's an impact there.
Yeah, I'm sure with that municipal grant, I mean, that $30,000 would probably have to officially come to the town, but nothing to say that we can't flip that to the fire district. Like Brian said, in a pilot agreement or some other agreement that the solicitor can come up with, if that's where the expense occurs. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's not our intent to make money on this deal.
No, I get it.
For the town to make money, it's basically to cover expenses. And if those expenses are on the fire side,
yep,
I have no problem sliding that money to them.
Yep.
And 100% agree. Okay. It's designed for that purpose. All the towns that are considering this will send the money somewhere. Yep, not a problem.
Has there been any discussion, because I know I haven't heard it, as far as the procedure? In the agreement that was listed, it says that there'll be referrals from Coventry Police and Coventry Fire. What is actually the vehicle for that? Is it through the emergency department? Is it the fire department actually calling somebody?
We are happy to meet with both police and fire. We have people. Thank you.
Sorry, we have people who are listening virtually and they
Thank
can
you.
only hear you there.
We are more than happy to meet with police and fire to figure out what is the best mechanism for them. As simplest, it would be a phone call. We know so-and-so is living here. can you help? We have outreach workers already in the community, so we may know some of the people already. If I were to talk with my outreach team, I'd say, you know, tell me who's in Coventry that you would focus on. And they probably have a list for most of those 15 beds at the moment. But we can certainly work out whatever arrangement is easiest for your police and fire departments to go ahead and make that referral. Or sometimes the public works folks know who's living outside because they're doing the bike path and things like that. So we're happy to work with whatever makes it easier to make those referrals.
Thank you.
My question's for you.
Councilwoman Shockley.
So do the residents of these facilities have to express a desire to look for permanent housing? So, you know, as opposed to, it's cold, I want to stay the night, I'm going to leave in the morning and I might not come back this evening. Like, are there rules to being a resident here?
There are rules, there are guidelines. As far as people coming for a night and leaving, that is extremely rare in these circumstances, particularly when we allow them to stay and engage in job search, engage in house hunting or housing hunting, putting in applications. We are going to have both services and recreational things for them to do during the day to be able to stay on the property, both in the backyard and inside. We are going to have computers on site for them to be able to do a job search. Sometimes they just need a job, they need to restart. We've encountered families that we were working with one family who both parents were working and they and the kids were living in the motel because they could not find a landlord that was willing to take the risk on them because they did not have 3 times the rent in income. So they were paying higher than that, higher than a standard rent to stay at a motel. So you definitely have those varied stories. There are some people that are on disability and just struggling. We have veterans living outside. So we're really going to try to work with each individual, but everyone has a housing plan. We work with everybody in our navigation center or in our shelter projects to have a housing plan because they need a next step. If their next step is living outside, it's not a good plan. So we actually try to engage them in a better safety plan. There are some people that are always going to choose to live outside, unfortunately. But most of the people that are willing to come into the shelter project are looking for safe, affordable housing. And that's what we try to help them achieve.
Thank you. Councilman Pasqua.
So another question that's probably going to be answered by you. The residents that have a history of substance abuse, are they going to be required to be in an active rehab program and sort of meet milestones? And I think what I'm trying to get at is it would be regretful to see it become a catch-all for people who are wanting to just keep it status quo, even for just a few months to stay out of the cold instead of get out of that, open a spot up for somebody else. So is it going to be a situation where they're required to be in rehab? They're required to meet certain milestones for substance abuse and counseling and so on and so forth.
Housing First, let me explain a little bit. Housing First is an evidence-based practice, which Rhode Island adopted many years ago. There are many states across the country that use it. Housing First is engagement and housing. That's the priority. Usually once we engage folks in some level of housing, even if it's shelter at this point, we can then engage them in those other services that they don't have. Part of that is substance treatment. Is everybody going to be required to go to therapy or go to group or do certain things? No, they are not. They are going to be required to follow the guidelines and rules of the program and to be good neighbors. If they can't be good neighbors, they're not going to be able to stay in the shelter. It's not going to be an option for them because we have to have the program within a community, even if it's not the one that we're talking about today. And they are a community in and of themselves. And I have staff to protect as well. So we're going to make sure that those folks can be a good neighbor, and hopefully we'll be able to engage them in those services. And Housing First, if you look it up, has a very good success rate.
Thank you. All right,
One more thing.
Councilman Pasqua.
So one of the concerns that was brought up was that what happens if the building is left in a state where there's some damage to it or anything like that? Is there any guarantee that it'll be returned in a good usable manner and not damaged?
I believe that's part of the contract as well. That needs to be left in the manner that it was given to them in, if not better, which I think it's going to be better at the end of the day.
So the improvements won't be removed, they will stay, any improvements that are done won't.
Lauren, if you want to comment, I believe so.
Yeah, so any improvements that will be done to the building will remain. That includes, maintenance to the heating system. That includes repairing anything that is damaged by the program. So, if comfortable, we can do a walkthrough at the end, make sure we're in a good place, nothing's been damaged. And during the time that we're there, we're responsible for the property.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, Town Clerk?
I'd like to make an amendment to this, so give me a second. Good.
Okay, hold on, please.
Like to make an amendment to the motion? I would move to approve this with the following amendment, that the building be left in the same, if not better condition that it was given in. That the fire districts are engaged, and if there is a cost that is ensued on the fire district, that town work with them in a reasonable manner to deal with that based on the municipal grant. And also ensure that there is an exit clause in this contract, that if this becomes an unsustainable situation, a town can exit. So I make the motion that we approve based on those three amendments, that the building to be left in the same, if not better condition, fire districts engaged by a town manager, compensated if there is a financial stress or operational stress due to this, and that there is an exit clause in this contract.
So we have an amendment to our original motion. Do we have a second?
That's how this works, right? You second one and then you add something else maybe. All right, I'll second.
Okay. All right, take a vote, roll call vote on the amendment, please. Town Clerk?
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
Yes.
4 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Good. Councilwoman,
I would have to ask the legality before I try to make an amendment, but I would like to make certain, whether it's due to something this council does during the next few months, the state does, that at the end of this contract, Thrive will rehome these people in shelters that are year-round in other parts of the state. I don't know if that's possible, but I want to make sure these people don't suddenly become a homeless population in the area that the shelter closes in.
Solicitor?
You don't have a way to force that in the contract, to force the state to find them a home. I mean, it's these transient.
An alternative shelter.
You don't have a way. I don't believe we have a way to do that. They could speak to that, but I don't believe that's possible.
I can guarantee you that we will work within our best ability to start them on the path of housing options. Given the fact that we have more homeless people in Rhode Island than shelter beds, I cannot guarantee that we would be able to move them from one shelter to another. But what we really try to work on with everybody is looking at what that next option is for them and walking through the process of applying as many places as possible for as many options as possible.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And I will supplement, that was beautifully said by Tammy, but we'll go beyond that, council member. We'll do everything that we can.
Thank
What
you.
does that mean? In the private market, help to identify apartments. It's hard, but we'll put our all into it. Finding alternative shelter sites here or elsewhere. If you all taking up Councilmember Ludwig's very good suggestion, I authentically think it's important. What do you all think would be best following April? Let us work with you on it. This is our collective problem. Let's keep working on it. And frankly, shelter should be the last resort option. So let's look first for housing. And let's look first for family connections that people can be, reunited. We have a problem-solving program that we're standing up at the housing department, brand new. Some of the agencies of Rhode Island, the nonprofits have been doing this. But if people need moving expenses to move in with a cousin, this is real. This really happens. They just can't get their stuff that they do have somewhere else. That's not in every case. Or if they actually are getting a new job and Tammy is helping them get that new job, but they need the security deposit because in that first month, along with the first month's rent, it's too much. We might be able to pay for that. We're standing that program up. So let's put our all into it. 15 is not 1,500. Let's put our all into it. If you'll step up, we'll step up.
Thank you. All right, Town Clerk, can you please call the roll? On the
Council-
amendment,
Councilmember Ludwig,
Wait, on the amendment? We already did the amendment.
on the
amended
original,
motion.
on the amended original motion, yes.
What?
Yep, on the
This is
original
to
motion,
actually saying yes.
yes or no to this
shelter.
navigation center
With the, as
With
amended.
amend-
as amended.
Councilmember Ludwig,
No.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc.
No.
Oh, sorry. 2 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative, motion does not pass.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Thank you, everybody, for tonight's discussion. Moving-
Vice President LeBlanc, can we please still make sure that we get an item on the next agenda? So that we can discuss what as a town we're going to do about this.
I agree.
For consideration, yes. Agenda item number 13, public comment for undocketed items. Anybody in council chambers want to speak on undocketed items? Anybody on Zoom want to speak on undocketed items? Going once, going twice, 3 times. I will take a motion to adjourn at 8:03 p.m. Motion, do we have a second?
A second?
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. That's our meeting for tonight.
Thank you for coming.
My parents would never forgive me if I could have kept 13, 15 people warm. And I said,
Yeah, it's a hard one.
it's a terrible, I'm not in disagreement.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's just the hard one.
But it's human.